I've heard this term being quoted several times. There's a couple people now in their head. Religion is the opium of the masses. Does anybody know who said that?
Our friend, Karl Marx.
Yeah, it wasn't in the Bible. it was Karl Marx that said that. Karl Marx said that. Not going to get into Karl Marx. I'm going to get into the Bible right now. And the reason why I'm getting into the Bible is because I want to talk about something that maybe you guys are familiar with. It says up there, what religion are you? Have you ever thought about that? When someone asks you the question. When someone asks you a question, so, what religion are you? I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I hope you haven't had to experience it. But when you go into the hospital, they have this tendency to ask you what religion you are. And I always think to myself, why do you care? If you plan on killing me, it's not going to make much of a difference to you, is it? But the reality is, they want to know. People want to know. Sometimes people see you and they say, what's wrong with you? You're not like everybody else. Are you religious or something? What religion are you? People ask that question all the time. I find it an interesting question because religion has kind of had a bad rap. It really has. Have you ever noticed that most people, they don't say they're religious. What do they say? I'm spiritual. I don't know what that means exactly, and I'm not sure if they do, to be honest with you. I'm spiritual. They don't want to associate with any kind of religion. Because associating with a religion makes them feel, I don't know, confined, bound up. I thought to myself, let me find out what the word religion means. So I looked in the dictionary. Where else would you go, right? I mean, I Googled it, but it is the dictionary, right? It says the belief in the existence of God or gods and the activities that are connected with the worship of them, or him, or the teachings of a spiritual leader. Here's the interesting part. It says one of the systems of faith that are based on the belief in the existence of a particular God or gods. The Jewish religion, Christianity, Islam, and other world religions. Then I looked at something, because I have a habit of doing this, of where the word came from. Where did this word come from that we hate so much all of a sudden? It's got a bad rap all of a sudden. And then I looked and it said, and I thought to myself, I kind of understand why people don't like the word. Because it says in Middle English, originally this was a sense of a life under monastic vows. Anybody know what a monastery is? A monk? We don't see them too often. They take these vows. Sometimes it's a vow of silence. Sometimes it's about chastity, poverty, all these other things. But then it goes on and says, from the old French or Latin religio, obligation to be bound to something. And that caught my attention. I said, to be bound to something. Now I know why people don't like this word. Because they don't like to be bound to anything. We're in a country that values what? Freedom. Home of the free and the brave. That's what we call ourselves. But we have a lot of laws, don't we? Have you ever noticed how many laws there are? There's tons of them. And we keep creating more laws. The reason why this thought kept going through my mind is because yesterday we were having our men's meeting on Zoom, and if you didn't get a chance to be on that meeting, let us know. We'll get your email, get you connected with that. But something came up, and I made this comment, and it made me think for a second, and I said, you cannot regulate the heart. You cannot legislate people's hearts and minds. As much as we have tried in this country to do that, you can't make people good simply by writing a law. We have tons of laws. People still break them. Or they bend them. Or they twist them. Or they get rid of them. And so it occurred to me that as I was reading, there is a parable. And it's in the book of Luke. And in the book of Luke, chapter 10, starting with verse 25, who comes up to Jesus? An expert in the law. For all of our purposes, a lawyer came up to Jesus. We don't like lawyers. Not sure why. They get us out of trouble sometimes. But we don't particularly like them, do we? They're expensive, and we don't know what they're talking about half the time. But the reality is, this guy came up to do what? To test Jesus. We're going to trap you in something. So he goes, and it says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus, and he says, "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" It's a great question. I think that's a question that anybody would want to know. You see, but the intent of the question, Jesus knew right off the bat. "What is written in the law?" he replied. Here is an amazing, and a lot of times we read past this very quickly. How do you read it? You see, this is the interesting part of the legal system. How do you read it? He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." He goes on. "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." That was a simple answer. But we want to get a little deeper, don't we? Because you didn't fall into the trap that I set for you. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who's my neighbor?" Good question. Have you ever asked that question? Do you really want to ask God that question? You might be surprised at the answer. But you may not like the answer, actually. In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side." Does anybody know why they passed by? You may not realize this, but if the man had been dead, they would have been considered unclean. And they would have had to go through a ritual bathing, and they would not have been able to go to the temple. And, I mean, come on, I'm a priest. I gotta get to work. I gotta go worship God. I don't have time for dead people. The Levite, same thing. He would have had to go and cleanse himself because he would have been unclean being around a dead body. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, which is basically 2 days' wages, and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Now, the test gets flipped in the wrong direction. This guy doesn't realize what's happening, right? Thought he was smart, thought he was a pretty slick lawyer. Now he met the lawyer of all lawyers. "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" Clearly, the man's not an idiot. The expert in the law, what did he say? He said, "The man who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Have you ever asked who your neighbor is? You ever really want to know? I mean, your neighbor might be a fundamentalist Islamist, and you might be a Jew. Might be a problem, right? That's your neighbor. Your neighbor might be, I don't know, pick somebody you don't like. In fact, pick somebody that you hate, that you wouldn't even go through their neighborhood because you don't like these people. That might actually be your neighbor. You see, the idea of a good Samaritan in this day and age that Jesus is talking was an oxymoron. It didn't make sense. What do you mean he's a good Samaritan? It doesn't make sense. No such thing as a good Samaritan. We don't even go into Samaria. We walk around it. That's crazy.